All right, everyone, it's time to talk about ancient environmentalism. A fascinating article, link in the description, archived, of course. I wanted to point out how this article tries to draw a comparison between the struggle against climate change and ancient environmental projects. So, Nerva's aqueducts and so forth, sewer systems of Rome, aqueducts, sanitation efforts. I would point out that these continue actually long after. Nostradamus, for example. This is not mentioned in the article. This is more about far antiquity. Nostradamus was originally a plague doctor. And one of the things that he prescribed to eliminate plague from villages and towns was to flush out swampy areas with fresh water, to divert streams and so forth into the sludge, basically, that was building up around these little encampments and stuff, and to wash it out. While his rosehip pills may not have done anything for the plague, probably eliminating half the rat population helped a little bit. Yeah, I would think that that would have been helpful. A lot of it about Pliny, actually. He repeatedly petitioned emperors to invest in projects in order to cover sewers, create, the aqueous systems that drain filth away from Rome, which had grown a reputation for being fairly unhealthy, etc., etc. Noting that when groups of soldiers stationed in one area for too long, they tended to pollute the land and it became decrepit. I would point out, though, that the article is fundamentally right with regards to environmentalism writ large and sanitation, but it's wrong about its central premise, and this is my problem with so-called modern, so-called environmentalism. It's devolved into NIMBYist nonsense. It's not planting a tree, like it was maybe in the 80s or 90s. It's paying somebody else to plant a tree, or paying a tax so the government can do it. It's not picking up trash, it's paying more taxes to hire more people to do it for you. It's not eliminating plastic bags at my store. Oh my God, I have to use paper. No, it's we need to do more about figuring out ways to dispose of the plastic that I myself am making use of over and over and over again. It's NIMBYism. The climate change bullshit is basically nothing more than a taxation grift. It's an offshoot of that same NIMBYism. It's a way to give government more regulatory power and more tax money. And it's wrong. What this article is alluding to is real environmentalism. People are getting sick because they're dumping their shit out the windows. Why don't we create a sewer system? Now we'll flood it with water, put it below ground, and then the waste drains away. The rats are going to stay down there. They're not going to trouble us up here as much because, they've got plenty down there. There's trash and stuff, and they had to clean them out sometimes, too. Just the same way they do in China, because you get all the gutter oil, and then sometimes people, re-tallow it and then skim it and sell it, causing all sorts of problems, health problems, gut problems, cancer, and so forth, because it's full of carcinogens. Because, of course, you don't know what else was in that sewer that you just scraped. Happens all the time. Please don't look up pictures of gutter oil if you are prone to, retching and things like that. If you have a soft stomach, you might not want to look at those images. Real environmentalism is do it your fucking self. Grow an organic garden. Instead of paying a tax so that the government can regulate, a certain number of organic products have to be on your store shelf or something, grow your own organic material. Learn how to process it. Do it yourself. Self-sufficiency is a good thing. Government fucking hates it. That's why they try to regulate everything. Real environmentalism is, hey, I just planted a couple of trees. It's not, hey, I paid somebody else to do it for me, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It depends on the charity I just donated to. It depends on how efficient the government is. Trust me, it's more efficient to do it yourself than to have the government do it for you. The government will always skim off the top. It is inevitable. It can't function any other way. It's impossible. This is real environmentalism we're seeing. And by the way, it has nothing to do with climate change. The idea of the four humors and the miasmas and stuff like that somehow being tied into the concept of humans needing to conserve the land because otherwise the world would become Tatooine never occurred to the people back then 2,000 years ago. What they're talking about is localized damage and the contagion that came from it. They didn't understand the basic premise of germ theory. They thought that bad air caused disease. Where does that stinky air come from? Human waste, swampy debris, trash and stuff like that. Yeah, you might get sick if you're living around that. Not because of the miasmas, though, although sewer gas can be a problem as well. There was a Big thing among the homeopaths, actually, at the dawn of the 20th century. I edited a work on the basic premise of using, can't remember exactly, I think it's carbonic acid to defeat, the symptoms of that, which was useful in surgery. Some people used it and some people didn't. American doctors, by the way, did not adopt it nearly as early as their European counterparts. That's why hospitals over in Europe were renowned for being better in general. Same thing with the Swiss. It was noted that Swiss hospitals were highly survivable compared to their contemporaries. Why? They were burning juniper wood in their fireplaces, thus releasing antimicrobial compounds into the air, basically doing the same thing that carbonic acid would do, only on a less smelly scale. Fascinating medical history, actually, when you think about it. And you've got Pliny and all of these others. They would send letters to the emperor and say, hey, this particular neighborhood is blighted by plague. And I think I know why. It's because of this smelly sewer. You've got this wonderful road going all the way down through Rome, says Pliny. But unfortunately, right next to it is what is called a stream, but it's actually just a slurry of filth that slowly runs along. Why don't you cover it? Brick it over so that people don't have to smell the smell. Oh, that sounds like a great idea, said the emperor at the time. Can't remember which emperor that was. But this happened repeatedly. It was noted that human filth created contagion, and filth of other kinds too. Again, if you flush this filth out, you're still flushing it downriver, but you can get it out of your particular locality. We live in a different world today, of course, though. So much pollution is created, especially in East Asia, China and South Asia with India and some of these other countries. So much pollution is created that it affects the entire world. Chinese coal power plants alone, they create a huge amount of pollutants that drift over to the United States along the winds that carry it across the Pacific. We have runoff from farms. What we should be doing is looking for novel approaches to prevent these things. Not to prevent climate change, though, to help the human condition and to clean up the environment. One big thing, reduce the use of plastics as much as possible, because that's one of the major pollutants now. I don't think that fossil fuel is a problem. I think that it's mainly plastic, toxic waste, even brine from desalination process and stuff like that. When it's pumped back into the ocean, you create dead zones. And also farm runoff. There are ways to adopt rotational organic farming that use far less fertilizer. There's no particular reason. We've been doing this all along. We were doing that for thousands of years and successfully before the advent of chemical farming. What happened is we became reliant upon it. For instance, my garden is completely organic. I don't use any chemical fertilizers. I use all natural fertilization sources. And crop rotation, companion planting, composting, things like that. It works. My yields are perfectly fine. You could easily turn a profit on it. Look at the price, for example, of cherry tomatoes in the store. I get a seedling for $3, or I start it myself from a seed that costs a marginal fraction of $1. And then I put it in the ground, give it a little bit of TLC. I've spent maybe $10 between time and resources to grow this plant. I've gotten $100 worth of cherry tomatoes that I can harvest. Properly cared for, it's actually not that difficult. It's just a matter of we need to teach people and we need to instruct them, do it yourself. So what we see here is a misinterpretation of ancient environmentalism. It was not NIMBYism. People didn't beg the government to clean things up. Sometimes a philosopher would say, hey, this is a good idea, and there were public works. Oftentimes, though, it was people taking their own initiative. They were building the infrastructure themselves. It was not all centrally planned, although in some cases it was. It was not NIMBYism, though. People wanted better crops. People wanted cleaner surroundings. People wanted less fucking diseased rodents wandering around and rabid animals and shit like that. And so they attempted to ameliorate that through whatever means they could. That's about all. Peace out.